And we're live. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Just kind of take it a little bit slow getting started here while we wait for viewers to start trickling in. Everyone can give a wave and say hi. All right, we've got people starting to come in already. Okay, so I'm going to start doing some intros to our topic and also to our panelists here. We have a really stellar lineup of panelists to talk about the topic of online marketing in the cannabis space tonight, this morning, wherever you are. It's morning where I am. I think it's nighttime for all of our panelists and probably the majority of our viewers. But also this recording is going to be live on the internet well after. So if you're tuning in ahead of time, thanks for joining us as well. So as you all know, the topic that we're covering today is online marketing in the cannabis space. And we're going to kind of dig in from a variety of different angles. I'm honored to have all of these panelists joining me here today to kind of represent a few different angles. We don't have everything represented here necessarily, but I think between us, we've got a pretty good spread. My name is Alana Goldberg. I'm the CEO of the Canigma, and today's webinar is being brought to you in collaboration with Weed Week. We have the creator of Weed Week here with me, Alex Halperin. He's going to be talking mainly about content and the really important place that content has when it comes to online marketing. I'd also like to introduce Justin Johnson from BuzzFeed. I'm going to be talking about growing organic audiences, which is, as you all know, super important when it comes to the cannabis space, given all of the limitations that we have on us when it comes to marketing, to paid marketing. And so we're going to dig in a little bit later. Thanks for joining us, Justin. And then I don't know if everyone's seeing the faces in the same order as me, but over to the right on my screen anyway, we have Alice Moon, founder of Alice Moon PR, an expert on a variety of different spaces when it comes to cannabis marketing, including social media, PR, influencers, and influencer marketing is what we're going to particularly dig into in a little bit. Really glad you could join us too as well, Alice. And then we have Paris Holly from Mantis Ad Network and also one of the founders of Medical Jane. He says he can talk about anything, but we're going to be honing in. Actually, we're kind of going to let him talk about anything. So yeah, really broad kind of knowledge and experience here. And we're going to get into that. Actually, Paris is going to start us off in a couple of minutes. And lastly, we have Matthew Sternberg. Did I say your last name right? Did I get close?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay, awesome. From Deep Roots Partners, going to be talking about specifically running paid campaigns, attribution, all the kind of keywords and jargon around that. So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts a bit there with Matt. So again, thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you to our live viewers. I can see that there's a few more of you now than when we started. Feel free to add any comments for us, any questions in the chat as we go along. We're going to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, either general questions for the panel, or if you have a question for a specific panelist, then go for it. You can do that as well. So in the interest of time, we've got like quite a few panelists here, so I don't want to waste too much time on fluff. Let's get straight into it. As I mentioned, when we were kind of doing a prep call for this, Paris threw out, I think, a fantastic line, which was basically everyone's doing everything wrong. So I think this is a fantastic place to start. It's kind of starting at the end, but I think it's a great place to start. Paris, what I would love for you to get us started with is the what not to do. Like when you say everyone's doing everything wrong, what are we all doing wrong, so that we can first of all stop doing that, and then we'll move over to talking about what we should be doing.
Yeah, so I would say just from a broad conceptual perspective, and I'm sure maybe Matthew will touch on this a little bit, especially in more recent years, what it means to do attribution, to run campaigns, the changes in privacy laws, and the closed platforms now starting to potentially be under regulators' eyes. What we know our biases about advertising and marketing are going to change drastically, and they're already changing. So the first piece I would throw out there is anything you're bringing to the table as far as years of experience, make sure that you're kind of stepping out of that and realizing that things are a little different now. The second piece I would say that I find happens a lot is people tend to think of their marketing in a bubble. And what I mean by a bubble is that as if they're the only product in the space. If we go back 5 years when CBD was just becoming a thing, and maybe vaporizers from a quality perspective, like quality portable vaporizers, as an example, hadn't really taken off yet. There was really not much you had to do to get into the market and say, hey, I'm here. Those days have long been over. Yet people are still running campaigns as if they don't have to think about what the competition is doing or how other products and brands are positioning themselves or marketing themselves. Great example. Matthew, I went to your website for the deep roots on the dispensary. There's like a screenshot of like Google reviews, and I saw like 3 dispensaries and they all had 4.5 stars or above. And it's like, what do you do when everyone within a 5-block radius has 5 stars? Like, you really have to think broader than just, oh, like, hey, I have a campaign or I'm listed or I'm here or there. It's just like, what am I doing to differentiate? And I think that's the element that I've seen over the years is differentiation is not a core part of marketing or advertising.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, and kind of what you're showing there is like the Google local pack, which is for, if you're a local cannabis retailer, whether it's CBD or dispensary, again, there's 3 choices, right? When you go search dispensary near me. And so then we're, framing this in, retail. But I think what you said, and something that I always teach my clients, is that marketing, the tools, right? Whether it's weed maps, programmatic, PPC, local SEO, whatever it is, those are traffic drivers. Once they land to your site, not only do you have to have a good functioning site, but if you're just the run-of-the-mill dispensary, I mean, there's no advertising that's going to save a bad brand, or a bad shopping experience. So pretty much what you said, it's those differentiators that are extremely important.
I want to just jump in here and ask, I think it's a really interesting point. How do you differentiate at that level, Matt? Like if everyone's, if you've got the exact same advertising sitting on the SERP, then how is a brand or a dispensary in this particular example meant to differentiate them there?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the SERP level, so there's two parts of the search engine results and positioning, which is what the SERP stands for. So you have the Google My Business, which is Google Maps essentially, and then you have the websites which pop up, which typically will be weed maps, your directories. Sometimes a actual site will pop up. And with Google My Business, which what I've seen drive the most revenue for dispensaries, what it really comes down to, so it's the reviews, having enough reviews, because you can have 4.5 stars, but if it's 60 reviews versus another dispensary's 600 reviews, that's a different, that's a different consumer kind of trust point. The other thing is the images. There's like these little tiny images, which I can kind of like, pop it up on the screen, but there's these images that'll actually show. But really it just comes down to being in that top 3, being in the top 3 choices. And then it really comes down to, what that consumer experience is. So they're either going to go to the website and see the website, see, oh my God, this is a beautiful dispensary, definitely want to go there. Or they're going to call the store. So, or when someone's calling your store, they're getting, hi, how are you? Thank you for calling, X dispensary or whatever the brand name is. What are all of those consumer touch points? And if all of those things align, then that customer will convert, which again is a lot different than, it's similar to an e-commerce store, right? Because the e-commerce store, like I'm sure Justin, you probably have a lot of insight on this as well, with converting organic traffic for, a vape device or anything like that. You have to take that consumer, through a correct journey, and whether it's telling the story on a single web page or having, a good customer service rep on the line. It's all about, what your store or, what your really brand says, not only just in a brand guideline, but in actual practice.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it touches on something that Justin and I were just talking about before the session, which was, this online offline connection that we have in the cannabis space. And of course, it's not completely unique to the cannabis space, but there's so much going on online, especially, in the pandemic times. I think we've definitely had an uptick over the past year and a half. And so I think there are a lot of brands in the cannabis space that are really new to online marketing. And I think when they're faced with, CPM, CPL, CPA, attribution, it all kind of sounds a lot like jargon. Well, it is, online marketing jargon. So I was hoping, Matt, you could kind of start pulling apart some of these terms, just like at a very high level, and then kind of dig into how they're relevant, when it comes to the campaigns that you're seeing your clients running at the moment.
Yeah, sure thing. So, it's interesting, right? I've been mostly in the retail space for the past 6 years. So a lot of the campaigns that I've run and seen successful for a retailer, right, is local SEO, which is someone searching dispensary or dispensary near me, and it's a very transactional. Okay, that person's going to come to that dispensary because within a 2 to 5 mile radius, this dispensary came up first, and then all the other factors that we just kind of talked about: good customer service, good website, all those things, and other retail factors. That's why they're coming to the store. What's actually interesting right now is I'm starting to work with a few brands that are, at least in California, which is a really kind of interesting market, and the market that I know Alice and Alex are very intimate with. There's not a lot of great channels for a brand to go. I mean, there's programmatic, which is banner ads. There's influencer marketing, which is really phenomenal. Build social buzz, and also build some transactions out of that. But what I'm starting to do is starting to talk to brands about, why don't you think like a retailer, and starting to test things like PPC, and then also in addition to like programmatic, but again, thinking like a retailer. So whether that's partnering with a D2C company or a delivery service, or driving traffic to their retailers in a unique way. So that's really kind of what I'm, coming to them towards. So even like with like influencer marketing, Alice, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on this. But like, when you have an influencer, can you have that, instead of just thinking, hey, what's going to happen with the social post, but can we get that influencer to actually show up at the dispensary, or have some sort of actionable item where, okay, great. You've got, there's a delivery service attached, and that influencer is also marketing delivery service in addition to the brand. So it's really thinking that way. And then back to what you're talking about with CPAs and, basically cost per acquisition. You have with cannabis, it's tough, at least in the license space, where you have this offline kind of online kind of separation, where it's not like you have an e-commerce store, there's a click, there's a conversion, and you're batting out to that. There's usually something that's separating, whether there's a piece of data missing from the campaign to the end purchase point. And I think as a brand, you kind of have to really work with your retailers to understand sell-through, and then as a retailer, you also have to understand how to track, because not all, like right now, across my clients, I'd say 90% of all transactions are actually still done in store. Maybe only 10 to 20% are actually done online. So online, I can track where the click comes from, where the sale ends, and all that type of stuff. But majority of the customers that come in are all in store, in retail. And really, it's honestly, for retailers, it's as simple. And what I tell my clients is, hey, like, you got to, make sure to train your receptionist to ask, hey, how'd you hear about Estate? And have basically your predetermined set of campaigns, what you're running month to month, not having them lead them on, but having them know when they say online, ask like, oh, do you, find us on your mobile phone or whatever it is, and then that will lead to Google, or they'll say Google. And I've seen enough of this where, we'll actually see, drastic difference when we start doing, Google campaign before and after people actually mentioning Google. Or if Weed Map spends goes up, we'll see, an increase in people mentioning, oh, I found you on Weed Maps. So while it is a little correlational, it's, the best that you'll understand. And again, you always have to look at trends. So that's the way I kind of look at marketing on the retail perspective. And then with brands, I'm sure even Paris probably has more insight, kind of running Mantis for, the past few years, and all that other good stuff, and Justin as well.
Yeah, I mean, attribution is a fun topic for me. So a lot of people don't realize that behind the scenes, technology companies have been severely limiting the capabilities of attribution. iOS, Apple products make up about 50% of digital traffic in general outside of Android. And from even click attribution is only valid for 7 days on an iPhone. And if you think about, the thing I like to bring up, and again, going back to kind of one of the flaws I see is, if you're thinking about like a PlayStation console or an Xbox, something that costs $200 or $300, no one's buying a PlayStation every month, right? No one's buying a new vape every month. No one's dropping hundreds of dollars, big purchases that frequently, right? And so there's a very big disconnect between a lot of brands and the products they sell, the price points, and the extent of attribution and how far you can look back, as well as trying to build a realistic expectation as to performance of paid spend, right? And so if people are going to make a purchase decision, for something like a dispensary where you're buying flour or oil and you're doing that weekly or bi-weekly, right? That purchasing decision process is a lot different than someone who's got to go look up reviews for vapes, who's got to go figure out, should I be taking a 2-to-1 ratio or 1-to-1 ratio? Like, the amount of research and digging on Google you have to do before you buy something that's either a couple $100 or before you're committing to reusing the same product every month in or month out is a long, drawn out process. So this idea that if I just throw money at any type of, whether it's paid marketing, social, programmatic, what have you, and I'm going to get a sale as a result of a click, like, in my opinion, that way of thinking is fundamentally broken. Just because of just the constraints you have. And again, Matthew pointed even on dispensaries, right? Like, sales lift as a tool existed way before digital attribution ever was, brought to the forefront. And if you really think about it, digital attribution is for, to be frank, it's for platform owners like myself, it's for Facebooks, it's for Googles, it's for platforms to justify you spending money. It's not for you actually to run a more effective campaign. And if something changes year to year out, you better believe that a technology company is just going to come up with a different methodology to prove that you need to spend money with them, right? The only true way to prove your marketing or advertising works is to A/B test from just a broad perspective. Whether you're retail and you're running on WeMaps 1 month, or you're doing newspapers or a billboard, like, if you're running 20 things at once, how are you going to tell what really works at the end of the day? Just those, I think, fundamental marketing concepts have nothing to do with digital, but they're constantly overlooked.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to say is, you got to keep in mind the data trends, right? And so you're never going to get 100% attribution from something that you've done and be able to track it end to end. And that's been true. It doesn't matter if you're selling potato chips or cannabis, right? We used to have a platform called Data Logics that you'd spend a lot of money on if you were Lay's or American Express or something like that. But it's important to watch the trend. If you're doing something that makes it trend up, you know that you're making positive movement in your marketing. But it doesn't mean you're going to be able to prove to your boss that the $1 million you spent here led to all these sales. It says that when I did this, these sales went up. It's how we've kind of justified buying TV for decades, right? Like, we know that when we run a Super Bowl ad, people buy more stuff from us. I can't prove it, but we know it. And it's just important to look at data that way, I think.
Yeah, it's super important. And this is exactly kind of what I was referring to earlier about how most brands that are getting into digital marketing in the cannabis space have no understanding of these, attribution algorithms that are going on the network end. I want to jump over, Justin, to talking about, the other end, which is, what if you don't have massive budgets to spend on advertising and you need to do it, the organic way? How do you build organic cannabis audiences in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I built BuzzFeed was really with the intention of supporting entrepreneurs. And it's a small community, right? It's 375,000 people on paper, according to Leafly. And then you have people in the ancillary markets and clearly in the industrial side of it. But what it really comes down to is embracing that community, creating content that adds value to them, creating utility that allows them to get something out of interacting with you. There's no reason for them to maybe interact with you unless that maybe they can build their business. So what I've done with my platform is I've made it basically a way for other people to join, share products that they're creating or that they're passionate about. And every time they come, they get, something out of it. They get the audience that exists there. buying their product, asking questions about their product. But they also bring their audience along with them, right? And over time, a fragment of that audience kind of sticks around. And over time, that audience is built, for me at least. And I've developed a community of curious people who are interested in finding cannabis related products. And I think by catering to the entrepreneurs and the enthusiasts, they're excited to have a place where they can share without retribution or getting shut down and then it's only there to help them, and as a result they help build the audience. They bring more like-minded people into the industry, and there's a lot of ways you can do that. You can do it by providing pure utility like traffic and traction and feedback, to doing stuff like original content, things that that they enjoy or that is valuable to them. We're in a very unique industry. It's very small, and I think it's great to have millions of followers and kind of try to boost those metrics, but you have to look at the power of what you have. You could have a couple thousand subscribers to an email list a month, and that could be a very powerful tool. You could have a million subscribers to email lists. Obviously that would be more powerful, but I think in this industry it's very unique because a very small group of people wield a lot of power. So that's something I've learned. I spent most of my career running digital marketing campaigns for very large companies that had anywhere from 10 to 90 million dollars a year to spend on ads, to working in an industry where nobody will let me buy ads until people like Paris came along and actually enabled it, right? It's still relatively new, and the budgets are getting there, right? But yeah, just I hope that was somewhat cohesive of an answer to you. I think it's really about embracing the community and trying to add value to what they're doing in their business, and as a result, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot there in what you said, and I think one part that's super important is building the quality audience, the quality over the quantity, supported by the content. As you all know, my background is in digital content, so that's always my line: is that content is king or queen. And I know that's a lot of really it's what we're all doing in a different way, shape, or form. But Alex, at Weed Week, that's the name of the game. It's like not millions of people necessarily on the subscriber list, but
Yeah.
just the right people, and driving value through that content. I'd love it if you can talk to us a bit more about how you do that.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me on the panel. It's so nice to be here with such a esteemed panel. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, as Paris was saying with regard to CBD 5 years ago, if you had a CBD brand, you could sort of have the space to yourself and have the internet to yourself. And now you can't do that anymore, and you haven't been able to do that for a long time. And I think it's the same with content. So a lot of companies out there have some sort of content operation. Sometimes it's folded into social media, sometimes it's separate. But I think it's really important to try and bring your original story to bear. And just that's a way to stick out. So, for example, in terms of folks, Weed Week is newsy. So every week, twice a week, I send out newsletters with the latest developments, and there's some original stuff written by me, some aggregated stuff. But what you want to do is try and find or try and put together content that nobody else can. So a couple of years ago, you might write about terpenes, and nobody would know what the hell a terpene was, and that would be interesting. But now everybody knows what a terpene was, or a much larger proportion of the audience knows what a terpene is. So no matter how good your story on terpenes is, it's still going to struggle. No matter what the situation. But if you can bring some of your original sort of the differentiators about your business to your content, that can help a lot. So perhaps if an indoor grower might talk about some of the ways that indoor growing contributes to terpene content and how that cultivates certain kinds of terpene content. And the same thing with outdoor growing. Or if we're outdoor growing, you might want to push for a more environmental angle, since that's a big thing these days. And if you can talk about how the industry's environmental impact and also how you abate that, or how you fix some of the environmental issues that some of your competitors might face, then I think that's probably a way to attract more content. If you're attract more of an audience, and of course it doesn't naturally lead to sales, but it gets sort of bouncing around in folks' heads, and then you can go from there. And same with like a wellness angle. Like right now, so many brands have a wellness angle and are making claims that they can't necessarily support. But if you have something strong there, that's what you should go for. Sort of the differentiator. So it's evergreen, meaning it's content that will stay interesting for an indefinite period of time, but also that really contributes to your individual value proposition.
Yeah, I think a point that I would add to content too is I think another missed opportunity is people don't realize that content isn't just content you produce with your brand's name on it. It's not putting it on your blog. It's not even running a publication and writing content. I think the biggest disservice I see for product brands is they pay publishers to write reviews and have no no expectations as to how the review is written. Now, and I guess to be more specific, people spend a lot of money on fluff pieces. And they spend a lot of money on fluff pieces expecting that the reader doesn't understand that they're fluff pieces. If I go to a publication and I go to like your vaporizer section, and I see you've done 20 vaporizer reviews and you haven't said one negative thing or one objective thing about a single product on your website, how am I as a consumer supposed to make a decision? And how is you as a brand going to differentiate yourself if you don't push these content creators to actually go out on a limb and talk about it? I know it's a difficult thing. You know, back when I used to live in the publication world, I used to go to conferences where people would scorn me and give me a piece of their mind because we would write a review that, you know, they were like, hey, we paid you to write a review. And I was like, you paid me to be honest about your product. And I think a lot of that is missing on the content side, and not even from reviews, but I think that brands, and I've brought up this point in the past where for me, fundamentally, I think there needs to be some concept of collaborative marketing. And what I mean by that is as a CBD product, it is in your best interest for the general public to think about CBD a certain way, whether it's your brand or product. At the end of the day, you know, we use the term stigma and all the negative connotations that come with cannabis use, the stoner side of it, you know, et cetera. And you know, I think Alex brought up you know, for years people use CBD as a wellness, you know, dietary supplement, and that got slapped down. And so, like, you know, brands let other brands kind of do whatever they want without really policing each other. And I think that's an opportunity where at least get together as a group and say, hey, you know, we're going to put standards in place as to how we talk about our products. You know, maybe if we get Oprah to go out there and say, hey, she loves CBD, right? Maybe she's not championing a single CBD brand, but she's at least talking about it in a way that benefits everyone. I think that needs to be another part of the content strategy as a whole.
Yeah, one thing I was going to mention actually is that it's a weird industry in that many of the brands have more power than any, you know, publication or even ad network to some degree, right? Like if you know, I'll call out you know, Puffco is obviously renowned for the innovation that they created. If they want to go out and promote something via their channels, you know, they have a lot of clout. And you know, I think there's other brands that benefit from collaborating with those other brands, and that ties a little bit back to what I was saying about the platform, and that, you know, when brands bring their audience together, That's why, and Alice can speak to this for sure. Like when brands collaborate with each other on social, or they collaborate with an influencer, those are people that are building an audience that, it's almost irreplicable from a publisher standpoint, right? It's a passion point about that product, and that's why they've been able to build so much passion around it.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect time for Alice for you to step in here. I think something that comes up as like a natural response to these limitations that we have in marketing in the cannabis space is influencer marketing and also affiliate marketing. They're kind of very strong channels or kind of like drivers in the space. And I'd love it if you can start us off kind of explaining what the differences are between influencer marketing and affiliate marketing.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on this panel today. So with affiliate marketing, you're working with an influencer and paying them a commission. So say like 10% of whatever sale they drive in. So with an affiliate, you can either give them a unique code that they can share with their followers, or you can give them a link that has cookies with it. So the purchase gets tracked back to that influencer. And then the commission rates go from like anywhere from 10 to 40% usually, depending on what the product is. And then influencer marketing is when you're working with an influencer and you're paying them directly. It doesn't matter how many sales they drive, you're still paying them to work with them. And usually you give an influencer some creative control where they create content that speaks to their followers and is unique to them. Instead of like saying like, hey, you're going to create this. This is exactly how you're going to look and all that jazz. It doesn't really lead to a successful campaign. So giving a influencer some creative freedom to promote your products in a way that speaks to their audience is helpful.
Okay, can you tell us a bit about what you see working? Like what's successful when it comes to influencer marketing these days?
So I think one thing that a lot of brands don't ask of influencers, but they should, is exclusivity. There's some influencers out there in the cannabis space that are just promoting all different types of brands nonstop, competing brands, right, one after another. And I think asking for exclusivity is showing better results of saying like you can. The 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after that we do a campaign together, you cannot post about a competitor. That gives their feed a little bit of room to just showcase only one brand. So I think that is good. I think working with micro influencers is showing to be really fruitful these days. Instead of going for the person with 100,000 followers, go for the person with 10,000 followers. And you can see the engagement rate is a bit higher for people with like 15,000 and below. The engagement rate is like 3 to 4%. When you're looking at over 15,000 followers, the engagement rate is 1 to 2%. So you can get better traction these days working with people who actually have a smaller following with an engaged audience.
Makes sense. We've got a question from the audience for you, Alice. We'll just jump straight in here from Susan. Are there any affiliate platforms who work with cannabis brands?
So I know of a platform called Impact, and that platform, I work with a company that uses that for their cannabis delivery service. And so that platform is really great for working with influencers. They handle like the taxes, the back end, the analytics. It gives a login for influencers to see their data. And I'm not sure how much it costs to use that platform, but I think it has all the tools that a brand needs to run a successful campaign.
Okay, great. And another question from the audience while we're here, and a reminder to anyone else who's viewing live at the moment, if you want to shoot us over some questions on Facebook or LinkedIn, now's the time. So a question from Kathleen: do these relationships, I assume we're talking about influencer relationships here, have to be declared or made public on the posts?
Yeah, so according to the FTC, an influencer does need to disclose that it is an ad. They need to do it within the first 3 lines on an Instagram post. A hashtag ad does work if you are within like the first 3 lines of your caption. You can't hide it all the way at the end where it's not easily discoverable. And that's the FTC's rules on influencer marketing.
Okay, so of course, most of the time that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah. What I normally do is I say gifted. This product was gifted to me. I declare that when I'm doing stories that are sponsored, I say like gifted somewhere on the post. So that way it's very clear. Because I do talk about a lot of products as an influencer, but a lot of times I'm talking about them and I'm not getting paid for it. So if I'm not getting paid for it, I don't need to do hashtag ad or anything like that. But if I do get paid, then I do make sure that it's known to my followers that this is a paid campaign.
Okay. I want to kind of tie this into what Paris was saying before. I really agree with your point, Paris, about reviews. I worked in performance marketing for a number of years, and reviews that are not real have absolutely no value to the user, in my opinion. And also, I think it kind of taps into this massive mistake that marketers in general, by the way, not just in the cannabis space, make of thinking users are stupid, thinking their clients are stupid. And I think that's like, once you've started off assuming that it's cool, we're just going to trick them all, that the chances of pulling off any sort of quality marketing and certainly quality content just like went down the drain. Anyway, the question I wanted to ask was about influencer marketing and kind of genuine reviews of the content. Do you find that influencers that you work with, and I guess in your own work as an influence, are generally bringing forth like a genuine opinion on the product, or do you think it's all just like straight puff pieces?
So most of the influencers that I associate with are very honest and don't want to promote a product that they actually wouldn't use and enjoy themselves. Sometimes they just slip in like a remark at the end of like, hey, so I really like this, but personally, this part I didn't really enjoy, and give some honesty to it. I used to be an edible reviewer, so I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of products, and I was very, very honest with all my reviews, and I try to be honest with my content. I don't use cannabis anymore, but I have people try products on my behalf, and I make sure all my posts are honest, and brands actually really appreciate that because then they can tweak their recipes, they can improve things. It's not just a terrible thing if you get like some type of negative remark to it. That's room for improvement for a brand and shows like ways that you can be better. So I encourage influencers to be completely honest with how they feel about a product because it's just going to help everyone to make an informed decision.
I'll just say that some of my favorite reviews out there right now are a series of videos on Instagram that two cannabis journalists, Jackie Bryant and Linda Mahari. I hope
Lindsay.
I'm getting Lindsay Mahari, Oyster Girl on Instagram, and it's a video series called Unrolled or something like that, where they actually look at what's inside pre-rolls, which is a pretty interesting question and a good idea because who knows what companies are putting in there, and then they actually review the product, and some of them do get negative reviews. So between the appeal of these two women who are very charming and know their stuff, and their willingness to smack down brands they don't like and really be very candid, I think they're probably doing pretty well for who's ever involved.
Yeah, because it's real.
Exactly.
And I see in the comments, Marissa asked, what's the best way to cold call / approach someone to do affiliate or influencer marketing? And I think just approaching them with respect, offering the fact that you want to work with them for a paid campaign, being honest about that. Because I think one thing that I strongly dislike is when a brand comes to me and says, we're giving you product and product only, but we want you to produce like a high-end video and some pictures and promote it to your 12,000 followers and also do it in 1 week. I'm just like, yeah, that's not how this works. So when a brand comes to me and says, hey, we would love to do a paid campaign with you, what is your rate? That is a great way to do it, is to find out what an influencer charges and get their rate, because it varies per influencer, and what they will accept and not do varies per person. So I think just coming with some respect and making it clear that you do want to work with them, and let them know why you want to work with them too, that their content resonates with you, that you've done some research into who they are. You're not just like email blasting every single person, that you actually show some interest into who you're trying to work with.
I'd also say, Alice, see if they have a website. If they do, and they have a professional presence, email them the way that they're asking to be contacted. Otherwise, if this is a very literal question, like most people will be cool if you slide into the DMs, as long as you approach them respectfully, like Alice is saying, and ask them what their rate is and tell them why you want to work with them, right? Be very genuine about it.
So a question I have for those of you that have dipped your toes in influencer space. So I'll add a preface to this and say my bias as a programmatic platform is out of this question. I think everyone would agree that organic or platforms that have the ability to go viral or virality of content is always going to give you exponentially more ROI than a traditional paid media route, right? But one of the things that I don't hear a whole lot when I hear conversations around influencer marketing is how do you have a sustained, repeatable marketing plan when you're dealing with influencers, right? It's one thing to find someone and do a campaign for 2 weeks where they're just promoting a product. But in my opinion, that's not a sustainable long-term strategy unless there's an endless, unlimited amount of supply of influencers that you could pay every 2 weeks, which to my knowledge doesn't exist, right? And so what strategies have you guys seen to tap into a long-term either relationship with individual influencers or putting something together that has repeatable results and ongoing growth and return?
I think finding influencers that are actually passionate about your brand is important because they're going to want to continue to talk about it and they have love for it. So I think finding influencers that actually would use your product, even if you weren't paying them to talk about it, is important. And then just being clear that you want to have a long-term relationship. I agree with your point that a short-term, like, here's a post, there you go, goodbye, doesn't really work that well. Building a relationship with an influencer is building a relationship with their audience. And that's, it takes a few times getting in front of an audience before it resonates in their brain and makes them want to go click it. That's just psychology. It's not like immediate, like sometimes it is, but it usually takes a few times to post a story, tag a brand over and over, and then somebody is going to want to go click through on that third, fourth, or fifth time. So I think just wanting to build the relationship, finding an influencer that is passionate about your brand and your product is a good way to go for building a long-term relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd mention a few things are if you find influencers who are really building like a structured kind of media business, you can do a sustainable plan where you're paying them a certain amount on a monthly basis and they're going to continue to get that return for you. They will create content for you that you can also use in your own channel. So as you build your own clout, you have original content that shows real people using it. I think beyond that, really the most powerful tool that I've discovered, or it's not that I discovered it during this part of my life, but is SEO, right? So if I get the vast majority of my traffic from organic search. I get a lot of it from social, but the majority of it from organic search. And that's the result of working with people who want to write articles, or I do interviews with people that are in the industry, and then they go out and share. They almost are influencers on my behalf. But if it's the right topic, to Alex's point earlier, and it kind of catches somebody's eyes, it could build a lot of long-term success and continue to drive traffic for years to come. So it's just how I think part of it's how you implement the content once you have those folks, kind of in your plan, if you will.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned is repurposing like an influencer's post and their content. And one thing that brands should definitely be aware of when you're working with an influencer, you should have a contract in place that lays out how you're allowed to use their content. Like, are you allowed to use it on your social media? Can you use it in a flyer? Can you put it in a magazine? So have those terms clear in your contract with the influencer, because otherwise they could come after you and say, hey, I didn't say yes, you could do that. That's not part of the campaign, and get the post taken down. So I think it's really important to just be clear about expectations of use of content.
No, and Justin, something you actually said, and obviously, my business is based off of what I do is based off, SEO. But I think we talked a lot of content and influencers, and I think breaking it down, I think maybe it's influence and the different types of ways to get influence, right? It's like you can have an individual posting on social, but that's a piece of content, which maybe they have a blog or a microsite. So like you said, getting that interview and then getting that link back, everyone thinks SEO is this mystical thing. Really, at the end of the day, you're trying to get other people that are writing content and creating content to then talk about you. and it's creating like these social signals and kind of influence signals. And so, that's kind of the way to look at anything, with marketing advertising, right? It's, you have your influencers, you have your, articles, reviews, whatever it is. And I think the other thing that even Paris, what you were saying with, kind of how to maximize everything or how to create a repeatable model. I think one of the things that I've seen cannabis brands and retailers it's always kind of been a fault of the industry is everyone is so kind of like, tunnel vision and narrow-minded. They're not willing to test influencer, affiliate, programmatic. They're all like, oh, this is a channel that I know and I'm only going to do this channel. And I think that's a huge blocker. I think it's just looking at everything holistically. And again, it always comes back to content and what you're creating, and then that goes to brand and all of that. But I think it's just creating influence in the different channels, whether it's influencer or programmatic or SEO, whatever it is. You're just creating social signals out there. So just something to think about as well.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Oh, sorry, Paris. I was just going to say, I agree with that holistic approach, that it's something, just like a good investment portfolio, you want to have a diverse kind of range of tools that you're using for marketing. And something that I think often goes out the window is being really goal focused. Like, what are you trying to do with your marketing? If your aim is branding, then you're going to have one approach. And if you're looking, all you care about is driving conversions, then maybe you don't care if anyone knows your brand. All you need to do is get them over to your website and make sure that you've got the CTA button in the right place. So I think it's really important to know for every different piece of marketing, and then obviously for a full marketing strategy, what are your aims, and then what are your different tactics that you have kind of in the arsenal. And as we've been talking about, influencing marketing is one of them, programmatic is another, SEO is another, building organic communities is another, getting like larger newsletter lists is another. And ideally, you're going to put them all together to make a strategy which does both, like kind of provide branding and exposure and essentially drive sales or conversions or traffic or whatever it is, that your aim is at the end of the day. Paris, I cut you off there. Do you want to jump back in?
Oh, no, I just wanted to add it on to something Alice said, that I think a lot of people miss, and whether it's an influencer or a product review, when you get someone to promote or give you feedback on a product, I find that a lot of brands don't lean into the outcome of those initiatives, right? So like if you see you have a vape and you give it to an influencer and they're like, I only use this because I love the clouds it produces. They literally have just given you a differentiator. And most people don't even look at it. They're just like, oh, I got a good review. They like the way the vape works, right? Instead of finding other influencers or other people who care about just blowing smoke on Instagram because it looks really cool, right? Like, you need to find those moments and really lean into them, and don't just keep giving your stuff to influencers or giving your stuff to publications to promote and say, hey, like, I'm giving this to you because I was told that you can't produce smoke with any other vape like this one, right? And prove that out and write that in your article, or something to that effect, where you're at least guiding someone down a path to speak in the tone or speak to the message that you control, versus just throwing something out there and not controlling the narrative.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that taps into this quality versus quantity thing we were talking about earlier. Like, honestly, you could have the best review that only hits 100 followers, but if it's the best review of your product, what you should do is figure out how do you reinvest back into that person, or how do you take that review and turn it into something different. So in my traditional life, when I was working at ad agencies, what we would do is, if we got a great write-up in Wall Street Journal or Forbes or New York Times or something like that, we'd invest in a native advertising platform, and we'd take that article and we'd push it everywhere. It benefited the publisher probably more than us in terms of sales, but it got that message out there. I think the same is true for influencers. If you've bought out the rights in perpetuity for somebody who creates an amazing video for you, try to figure out if you can take that video and put it throughout your programmatic video buy, and buy video across the web using a true authentic video created by one of your users than just an ad. Figuring out other ways to take that content and leverage the tools that are we're honestly gaining access to every day. Clearly, we don't have the Facebook and Google ads. They don't have our back yet, but fortunately, there's people like Paris who does.
Yeah, I'd kind of build on that, Justin, as well, and say that if you found something that works, if you found like that amazing line from the influencer or the article that kind of caught on, then kind of translate it into every format you can. Make sure that you have a podcast on that topic. That you know, put out an infographic, make a few videos on it, like make sure that you're going to catch every eyeball or ear or whatever it is in as many places as possible. We've got another question here from the audience, which I think is really interesting. Definitely get you to start off on this one, Paris. A question from Christopher. Are there any cannabis companies having success using programmatic?
Yes. It's sadly such a loaded question, but with any channel, the answer is yes, and the answer is no, right? The reality is that all these platforms work as well as you make them work. Every channel has unique ways of approaching them, right? The same type of messaging and campaign and creative and targeting that you would do with an influencer or for getting on a publication or doing programmatic, they're not the same. I've even seen, as an example, CBD brands, two brands, and we work with, at this point, hundreds. And they could have the same looking creative picture of the product. Maybe there's a discount code or a price, and one person's campaign will kill it and the other person's won't. And when you start digging into the details, it's so nuanced that there really isn't a clear like checklist of like, here are the 5 things you do to run a successful X campaign, right? That list just literally doesn't exist. You have some brands that have the advantage of existing market presence. You have some brands that are starting from scratch. You have I think someone mentioned earlier, like having a review in the New York Times, like brands that are promoting what other people think versus promoting themselves, right? There's so many different ways you can go about it. And, that's not even getting into the loading speed of your landing page and, the call to action and all those things that you optimize on site. So yes, you can find success with programmatic or any other channel, but ultimately it's going to come down to doing it the right way.
Yeah, and then I also want to chime in on this as well. A lot of something you actually just said earlier was you have to decide what your goal is. Is it branding? Is it conversion? I just recently had a spirited discussion with one of my clients where we talked about, I've been working with him for a year, mostly doing organic SEO. He's a retailer. And, with organic SEO, he's been able to get a pretty good return, about anywhere from 5 to 10x a month, depending on what where the algorithm is and where they're ranking. But it's still a really healthy return, and he wants to start testing other channels. And we've tested programmatic before, and again, it's a mindset thing. So Paris, kind of like you said, it's what what does the channel mean to you, and it's kind of dependent on the brand. And so I think it's what people are, and it's something that's actually really interesting and something I've talked about with some people in the ad tech community is, a lot of retailers and brands, they're so transactional, right? It's, they need to spend $1 and get 5 back, and not, spend $1, maybe get $1.50, maybe lose, and then realize, over time they're, tweaking the messaging or whatever it is. It's so just kind of, again, one track minded. I think it goes back to, you really have to understand what your outcomes want, what you really want your outcomes to be, and then also willing to learn, test, and kind of just going back to that willingness to figure things out. So, like I said, I've seen everything from success and to failure, or someone's success is someone else's failure too. I've also seen that across different clients as well, where one campaign is like, all right, cool, we got a 3x return, and to somebody else that's that's too expensive of a client, too expensive of an acquisition cost.
I think that lack of sophistication also exists across like every industry, right? Like the how much somebody invests into retargeting, maybe that's going to get you your best return if you want to sell stuff. If you want to build awareness about your brand, you should be putting it on every platform that your customer might be at, but not expecting that they're going to click an ad and buy something immediately, right? And what a retargeting ad is going to be like a lot different than an ad that's generating awareness. An ad that's generating awareness is going to say, hey, this is what this is. A retargeting ad might be, hey, it's a rainy day, you want to re-up, or the messaging has to change. But I think you're right. There's always, you have to have the right objective. And then pull the right lever. The technology that's out there today is very powerful, and it's just a matter of thinking about it from both the technology and the strategy side, as well as you have to have the creative. You can't just because you have an ad, you can't just plug it in and expect that all of a sudden it's going to start getting you like sales results.
Right, and the testing budget, I think this is something that's often missing, is like this idea that like you do have to put aside, and I'm not going to throw any numbers, but like a certain amount of money that you're willing to lose in order to nail it on any particular platform. And I think that's true. We have advertisers come to us and they want to put an ad in our newsletter, for example, but they just want to pay for one. And it's like, yeah, cool. I mean, you can put one ad there, but really what I would prefer to do is put one in every month, and then we'll see what works and we can optimize it, and then we can nail it. And then that initial investment is actually going to pay back, instead of like, you put down $500, it didn't work, and so I'm going to go elsewhere. Then I'm going to put $500 down on Mantis, that didn't work, so I'm going to go elsewhere. And you're just going to end up wasting more money than you would have if you would have thought, I'm going to put a few $1,000s and look at it as my testing budget. That's super important. All right. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it's the hardest thing in this industry, that when you're in a traditional industry, like a consumer packaged goods, you might have a lot of money to test, and you have tools like Facebook and Google that are going to get you to that. Like even somebody sitting in their basement can figure out how to get profitable off of Facebook ads. I think it's having enough money to test, get the data that you need to make those decisions. A lot of people don't necessarily have that money yet, or they're going and spending it in other ways, and neglecting to think they even necessarily have similar options available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think we have time for one more question here before we start to wrap up. So we have a question from Benjamin. I think this is a question for pretty much all of us to answer. Does user-generated content resonate in the cannabis space to the same effect as it does in the retail or non-cannabis space? Anyone want to jump in here?
Well, I've only worked in cannabis, so I don't know necessarily the success outside of cannabis and how it works, but I think user-generated content is great to have that. I think that just shows some like realness to it and relatability to have that type of content out there. So I'm a fan of user-generated content. I think it resonates in the cannabis space, but I would love to hear what everyone else thinks.
Yeah,
I think more so.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say more so. It's one of the only things that we really have as in our arsenal, right? So UGC, getting your product out to thousands of people and actually having them report back and creating content for you is like a gold mine. In my opinion, it's something that the industry desperately relies on because, it's just we don't have access to as many of the traditional tools that a non-cannabis related industry has. Sorry, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Oh no, it's all good. I think to Dallas's point, what we're probably all going to be in agreement on is, I think UGC or that style of kind of raw content, I think actually is the best in cannabis. So if you go look at some of the most successful brand pages, or people that have really high engaged followings, think Alien Labs, 710 Labs, all these very kind of culty, cultivators. And go look at their content. It's shot with a cell phone. It's super raw, and it's like nerdy, and like the caption is like a 2 paragraphs long, and it's really it's fun. It's something that we've actually tested. And when I had an agency where we're doing a lot of social management, is we would do the really nice photo shoot, and the nice photos would get less engagement than the cell phone photo that we just randomly decided to, whip out our cell phone, got a really nice nug, took a photo of that nug and posted that. And then that thing, skyrocketed. And so it's really, really interesting, when it comes to user-generated content or content that's shot on an extreme budget with just a cell phone or whatever you have available.
You even just look at the memes, people are creating these and it takes up. I mean, it's something that we connect with. I think it's the rawness is part of it. I think it's, I guess you could chalk it up to being authentic. But, just to give you for instance, Chill Still Pipes, at Getting Chill on Instagram is a company that I launched April of this year. We had some really nicely shot photography for that to get going, for our website and all that. but we haven't had to create content in months. A, because we're working with influencers, but also because people are getting it in their hands, they're loving it, and they're sending it to us. And frankly, you know, half the people that are getting it, they're better content creators than me. And from a, you know, I can work with people to create content, but as individuals, you know, some of the, you know, a lot of people were born with a smartphone in their hands these days, you know, so there's a lot of people out there that know their way around a camera and how to make something for today's digital channels.
Yeah, I would add there, I really believe in UGC and user-generated content, and I specifically in the cannabis space believe in expert user-generated content. That's, you know, where you really get the money. It's like there's so much crap out there, basically, in the cannabis space and the CBD space, definitely. But when we can get...
What's expert UGC? Sorry.
User-generated content, which is generated by users who are experts, not just users who are talking, you know, based on, you know, other rubbish that they've read on the internet. So, for example, if you can get a scientist weighing in on a mechanism that a brand is talking about for a particular product, I think that, you know, puts you even a step ahead there. All right, we're at the end of our time, so we're going to have to start wrapping up. I'd like to thank, first of all, our, as Alex said before, really esteemed panel here. Thank you all for joining me. I'd love to give just a second if anyone has any shout outs that they want to give for anything coming up, anything that any of our, oh, there you go, there's a cat. Anyone, yeah, want to plug anything, we can do that. I think also you'll be able to find any of us pretty easily. We have good SEO, pretty easy on LinkedIn or on any of our respective channels. But if anyone wants to give any specific shout outs, now's the time.
Yeah, so thank you everyone who tuned in today. You can find me on Instagram, the Alice Moon, or add me on LinkedIn, Alice Moon there as well. My website is alicemoon.la, and I recently launched an influencer marketing course. It's a 101 to teach brands how to work with influencers. So if you're interested in learning more, come send me a DM and I can send you more information about it. And each course comes with a 30-minute consultation with me after the course is complete, where I give a brand, help them with strategy and just answer any lingering questions they may have, and help them do a successful influencer campaign.
All right, I'm up next, I guess. You can follow me. I'm Justin Johnson, so it's going to be difficult to find me on LinkedIn, but I'm the one that owns BuzzFeed and Chill Still Pipes. You can also follow us on Instagram at BuzzFeed_, or go to BuzzFeed.com. You know, the online chat there is powered by me and a couple members of my team. Also say that I am going to be buying Alice's course for my community manager, and you should go do it too.
No.
Please. Oh, I guess I'll go. So I write the Weed Week newsletter twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, and you can subscribe for free at weedweek.net. We've recently incorporated some new sections called On Social, which is sort of interesting posts from around social, High Society, photos from cannabis events, In the Weeds, which is like in-depth stuff. So if you have stuff that you think we should include, please send it along to me. I'm always looking for good links to include that my competitors haven't necessarily found. And you can reach us at hello@weedweek.net, and we're on Twitter and Instagram at weedweeknews, Facebook and LinkedIn too.
Cool. So yeah, so I run Deep Roots Partners. So we're an SEO agency and really paid SEO and paid digital agency focused on the cannabis retail space. Work with retailers all across the country, even the UK as well. I have one CBD e-commerce retailer out there. And happy to talk about retail marketing and kind of how, to maximize, organic SEO and organic reach. And then also how we're doing some fun stuff with snaking around Google's platforms and actually getting YouTube ads live and PPC ads live and a lot of fun stuff there and some other tactics we're doing. And you can find us at deeproots.io or shoot me an email at matt@deeproots.io. And also find me on LinkedIn, always on there and, trying to post some nuggets here and there. But always happy to talk marketing, share data, and all that fun stuff.
Last but not least, so thanks everyone for having me. And yeah, I mean, so if you guys are interested in the programmatic space and how programmatic can kind of help scale your branding initiatives, check out Mantis, or just give me a shout. My name's pretty unique, so you can find me just about everywhere.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I'm also, LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me, and you can follow the Kenigma, pretty much every channel, the Kenigma or Kenigma. Shouldn't be too hard. We've got a couple of webinars coming up next month and the month after. The next topic we're going to tackle is how to make a tincture, a little bit different from the topic here, but tune in for that. We'll have some information in the next few weeks. And after that, we're going to look at cannabis and psychedelics, because we decided it's time for us to get into psychedelics as well. So really looking forward to that one. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to watch us live, or to anyone who's watching the replay. Thank you as well. And to our panelists, let's be in touch. See you all soon.
Thanks so much. Have a good night, everyone.